Hi friends. So today we will discuss conjugate acid-base pairs. Initially we discussed Bronsted-Lowry concept. If you haven't seen that video, do watch it. Now we will discuss conjugate acid-base pair. So basically in any acid-base equilibrium, like both forward as well as the reverse reaction involve proton transfer. Now what it means? If you see in this reaction, let us take any hypothetical molecule again, HX plus water in equilibrium with X negative plus hydronium ions. So here, if you see in forward reaction, what is happening? HX is basically donating a proton to water and it is changing into X negative and water is changing into hydronium ion. So HX is basically donating a proton. So HX is acting as an acid. And now if you see, let us see the reverse reaction. Now, if you see here in the reverse reaction, what is happening? This hydronium ion is donating a proton and changing into H2O. Initially, it was H3O positive. Now it is H2O. So it is changing into water. So it is basically donating a proton. And we know that if something donates the proton, it acts as an acid. So, but we call it as, we won't call it as acid, but we will term it as conjugate acid. So here hydronium ion is acting as a conjugate acid. And if you see X negative is changing into HX. Correct? So it is basically, it is gaining a proton. If something gains the proton, means something accepts the proton, it acts as a base. But here the term we will use is conjugate base. Conjugate base. And HX is an acid. Water is acting as a base in this example. So according to which concept? According to Bronsted-Lowry concept. Okay. So basically you need to remember one thing. The base formed from acid is referred to as conjugate base of the acid. Similarly, acid formed from the base is called conjugate acid of the base. So this is the acid. And it will form conjugate base. And this is a base. It will form a conjugate acid. Fine. I hope this is clear. Now let us take an example and discuss. Okay. Nitrous acid, which is HNO2 plus water in equilibrium with NO2 negative plus hydronium ions. Now, if you see in this example, HNO2 is losing a proton, correct? It is donating a proton to water molecule. So it is acting as an acid. And water is gaining a proton. If something gains a proton, it acts as a base. Now acid will form a conjugate base. So here we have an acid. Acid will form conjugate base. And base will form conjugate acid. Okay. Fine. Now your turn. Like try to do few questions. What does the conjugate base of so I will do the first question. If you see here, the very first one is HClO4. So what HClO4 will do? So we have to find the conjugate base pair. So this is an acid, it will lose a proton. And if it will lose a proton, it will change into H positive plus ClO4 2 negative. So this is an acid. After losing the proton, it will form a conjugate base. So this would be a conjugate base. Now for try for H2S, pH 4 positive and carbonate. Give it a try. Pause the video and give it a try. Okay. For H2S, it would be just lose one proton. It would be HS negative, which is a conjugate base. For pH 4 positive, it would be pH 3, neutral molecule. And for HCCO3 negative, it would be CO3 2 negative. Fine. I hope this is clear. Okay. Now one more question. What is the conjugate acid of CN negative, SO4 2 negative, water, and this molecule? So I will do the first one for you. So here we have to find the conjugate acid. So means these are all bases. So what is a conjugate acid? Acid is something which will. So these all are, we have conjugate bases. Okay. So these are bases. So let us make a conjugate acid from it. So Cn negative, it will gain a proton and it will change into HCN. So this is a base and base will, so this is a conjugate acid form. Now pause the video and try for the other three. Okay. For SO4 2 negative, it would be HSO4 negative. For water, it would be hydronium ion. And for HCO3 2 negative, it would be H2CO3. Fine. Now next we have, so let us do one more question. We have HCl aqueous plus ammonia in equilibrium with ammonium ions. Yeah. Now identify the conjugate acid and conjugate base in this. Pause the video and do it. Okay, see. Here, HCl will act as an acid. It will donate a proton. It will lose a proton. There will be loss of proton. So it is an acid. And NH3 will act as a base. It will gain a proton. Now, here, so base, the counterpart of the base would be conjugate acid. So this will act as a conjugate acid. And Cl negative will act as a conjugate base. I hope this is clear. Now let us discuss the relative strength of the conjugate acid and bases. Like these are formed, now what will be their strength? How strong or how weak they are. Relative strength of, so conjugate acids and bases. So you just need to remember 4 things. I will summarize the concept for you. So just remember that strong acid has a weak conjugate base. So strong acid will make a weak conjugate base. If you have a weak acid will make a strong conjugate base. Strong conjugate base. Now, if you have a weak base will make strong conjugate acid. Strong conjugate acid. And the 4th point is strong base. Strong base will make weak conjugate acid. Fine. This is the summary. Now let us try to solve an example to check the strength of the acid and the base pair formed. So HCl plus water in equilibrium with hydronium plus chloride. Okay. Now I guess you all know that HCl is a really strong acid. So the base form, the conjugate base form would be weak. So this would be a weak conjugate base. Fine. Similarly, water is a weak base. So the acid formed would be a strong conjugate acid. Similarly, let us take another example. Acetic acid in equilibrium with water. We have acetate plus hydronium ions. Now you know that this is a weak acid. This is a weak acid. So it will form a very strong conjugate base. So the conjugate base formed by this is this. This would be a strong conjugate base. Okay. I hope this concept is clear to you. Now your turn. Give it a try. Okay. So I'll give you that given the fact HClO4 is a strong acid. How would you classify the basicity of Cl? Okay, let me write it again. ClO4 negative. So think. Okay. So for this answer, you can send your answer to our mail, which is wisdomscience25@gmail.com. So we will check your answer and will revert back. Also, one more information, our institute provide individual tuitions also at very affordable rates. So if you want one, it would be a one-to-one class and you will plan the lesson. You will tell us in advance which lesson you want to study and we will charge accordingly. Fine. So rates are very affordable. Just mail us if you want one. I hope the concept of the conjugate acid and base pair is clear to you. Do subscribe if you like and just share the video if you like it. Thank you. Bye-bye.